What is going on, basketball lovers and hoop heads? Welcome back to Checkup. I, Bryce, am here to host you as always. Now, today's video starts with a simple question. Should the Milwaukee Bucks trade Giannis Antetokounmpo? If you've been living under a rock, earlier this week, Shams Charania came out with a report that basically said Giannis and his representation are going to speak with Bucks leadership, front office leadership, about Giannis's future with the Bucks. Now, if you remember in the offseason, there were some rumblings about Giannis perhaps asking out or asking to leave, but things never really got anywhere because the Bucks, they stretched and waived Damian Lillard in order to sign Miles Turner. They made a move that hopefully would put the Bucks a little bit closer to contention, as Giannis wants, and that seemed to satiate him for a while, so the trade rumors died down. Nothing ever really got anywhere with that. Now, amidst an unfortunate 10-15 start, the Bucks are currently 11th in the Eastern Conference. They are nowhere near contention, and Giannis, after just missing 4 games, is going to be out for, it looks like, at least a few weeks here with a calf strain. So the Bucks are in a difficult position. Obviously, Giannis is a franchise icon, perhaps the best player in their history, but they are nowhere near to giving him what he wants, which is the ability to contend for a championship. That's just not possible right now. They don't really have a vehicle or a pathway to contention, and it just feels like we're really going nowhere. And again, with the report that came out earlier this week, it really just feels like we're in the stage of a soft launch for a formal trade request. So I'm going to argue in this video that I think the Bucks should go ahead, let's rip the Band-Aid off, let's go ahead and start the search, and let's explore trading Giannis now. The reason that the Bucks need to be proactive currently is because Giannis maintains the most value in this day, right now, right in this moment, before this season ends. And that's for one reason, really. Giannis has 2 years left on his contract. That means if a team trades for him today, they've got 2 playoff runs with him. Not one, you get 2. You get 2 guaranteed playoff runs, rather than if you wait till this offseason or you wait till you get too close to the trade deadline for the formal request and then you're not able to get a deal done or as good of a deal as you want. The value is just going to be lower unless the Bucks try right now in this moment to just go ahead and start the trade talks, go ahead and start calling teams, and just get this thing done and over with, unfortunately. I think the East is obviously as wide open as it's ever been. So there are a lot of teams right now, and we're going to talk about a couple of them that should be vying or could be or will be vying to trade for Giannis should the Milwaukee Bucks pick up the phone and call them. And they might be willing to give up some decent assets in return because they know they're getting 2 playoff runs out of him. They know that there's a very good chance they could make the finals if you go out and trade for Giannis. And I think the Bucks, it's almost organizational malpractice if they wait too long to try and trade him, or if they just don't try and trade him at all. Maybe they go out and try and better their roster, which the roster itself is so far away right in this moment. I just don't think that makes any sense. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some teams. Let's talk this through. We're going to talk about some frameworks for some packages and what Giannis could do for those teams and why they might be interested in trading for him. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention that, of course, Giannis is in the midst of one of the best seasons of his career. If not for the injuries and the Bucks' kind of blandness as a team, he would most certainly be a top 3 MVP candidate. I mean, he's currently averaging 29 points a game, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. The 6 assists being very important to me. He's showcasing that he can still be the focal point and the center point of a team. And if you just give him some tools, some useful tools around him, he can take a team to the promised land, I believe. I think he's still that level of player. He's obviously always been an incredible defender, and I think he can really elevate a team that goes out and trades for him. So we're going to, again, like I said, we're going to talk through 5 of my favorite destinations for Giannis, the frameworks, what kind of packages would need to be done, and then, maybe you guys can discuss it out amongst each other what you think is the best. I do feel it is important, though, to mention, I was listening to the Hoop Collective, which is Brian Windhorst's podcast, the other day, and he was very adamant that he believes a trade package for Giannis right now during the season is probably less than you are imagining in your head, right? Most star trades that we've seen in the recent modern NBA, we're talking about maybe 1 to 2 young prospects and then like 4 or 5 picks. And Giannis, who's still a top 5 player in the NBA, like these kind of guys don't just come on the market really ever. What would that look like? Well, Brian Windhorst actually had some really interesting things to say, and he was of the opinion that most teams out there are kind of timid when it comes to star trades and kind of emptying their war chest, so to speak, for star players because of the second apron and the cap rules that we live with. So there is a really good chance that a Giannis trade could come about that we are all kind of underwhelmed by. We're just kind of shocked at how little it is. Maybe it only ends up being 2 or 3 picks and like 1 young guy. We'll see. Again, like I said, I'm going to talk through a couple of things that I like, and let's just go ahead and get to that, and I'm going to stop rambling. Now, I think the team that is most interesting to me, and the one that I would want to have the longest discussion on, and we will definitely on the podcast coming up on Tuesday, we are going to have a very long discussion about this. I think the most interesting Giannis trade destination is the Atlanta Hawks. That's for a couple of reasons. The Hawks have looked really good, kind of as of late. They had a rocky start to the season, the unfortunate Trae Young injury, and now without Trae Young, the Hawks, they look quite good. They're playing good defense. They play very connected. We've talked about how wide open the East is. If the Hawks could trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, that might vault them to number 1 contender in the East. At least they'd be in the conversation for it. The other reason that this destination, I think, works really well is because they have 2 very important picks that they could give to the Milwaukee Bucks today that I think the Bucks would be very much interested in. And that is, of course, the 2026 Pelicans pick that they have unprotected from the awful Derek Queen trade. And they have Milwaukee's own 2027 pick. So if the Bucks decide that they want to go ahead and trade, they want to move off of Giannis, they want to tank, they can get their own 2027 pick back, and they can get what is probably going to be at the bare minimum a top 5 pick in this year's draft. So those are 2 incredible assets that you can offer the Bucks, and I think they can get this package done without giving up a whole lot else, to be honest. When you hear people discussing the Hawks trades, there's kind of 2 trains of thought. One, they could trade Trae Young and a few those couple of picks, and that could be kind of your package. I don't love that, though. I think if I'm the Hawks, I would rather keep Trae Young, have a great traditional point guard around. It could be, you could kind of say it's another version of Giannis, Dame, but I think Trae and Giannis might work a little bit better because Trae is just a much better playmaker than Dame is, unfortunately, and Dame likes, big screeners who can get him open for pull-ups, and that's not really Trae's game. So I think if you could pair Trae Young, Giannis, and Jalen Johnson together and just create this triumvirate, this trio, all 3 of whom are really good playmakers. You could let Trae get off the ball a little bit more and let him, be a spot-up movement shooter rather than an on-ball shooter. I think that kind of team concept appeals more to me. So the trade package that I like with the Hawks is you could do something centered around Zachary Risache, Kristaps Porzingis, and those 2 picks, the 2026 New Orleans pick and the 2027 Milwaukee pick. You could take that trade package. That trade works. It succeeds. And I think that's really not a bad return for Milwaukee. Again, two really great picks. You get the number one pick from just last year, who looks like, a promising at least 3-and-D wing in the NBA at the bare minimum. So I really like this idea for the Hawks. If that opportunity was presented to them, I would have a hard time saying no. It just, again, the East is wide open. If the Hawks really want to be a relevant contending team, I think the Giannis trade would immediately vault them into that status. But you guys can let me know what you think, whether you're a fan of centering things around Trae Young or whether you'd rather kind of go the Kristaps Porzingis Ricochet route. The next team we have to talk about is the New York Knicks. Now, Brian Windhorst also reported recently, and this was kind of reported before the season, that Giannis's preferred team outside of Milwaukee would be to go to New York. He wants to be in a big market. New York is also a team that is obviously very close to contention. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So what would a trade to New York look like, though? Well, we'd be talking about a trade that centers around Cat. And for this trade to work monetarily, you would probably have to throw in OG Anunoby. So we're talking about Karl-Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby for like Giannis and Kyle Kuzma. That works financially. And then New York is throwing in a few of the picks that it has. Yeah, a couple of its own. I think they might have somebody else's sprinkled in there. But again, this is a star package. This is star for star. This is not Milwaukee getting a huge rebuilding package. This is them taking back a lesser star and then hoping they could maybe flip Karl-Anthony Towns for further assets. Or they could build around Cat if they really wanted to, but I don't love that idea. Obviously, we have to bring up New York. We have to talk about them. It's reportedly Giannis's preferred trade destination, and apparently, again, according to Brian Windhorst, Giannis requested a trade to New York just before the season, or said that he wanted traded there, something along those lines, right? There's an obvious connection here. I just don't love this, especially for Milwaukee. I know you want to do right by Giannis, but I don't think that means you have to trade like an objectively bad trade package. So unless we're finding a framework where you can immediately flip Karl-Anthony Towns, like some sort of 3-team trade, or you can flip Towns for more talent immediately, I just don't like this. I don't think it's a good enough return for Giannis. I also don't love it for New York. Obviously the talent is there with Jalen Brunson and Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I think like New York's defense probably gets worse trading off OG Anunoby. Like their wing defense gets significantly worse if they trade off OG Anunoby, and obviously it would work, but I don't love the Jalen Brunson, Giannis Antetokounmpo fit. Listen, if New York can pull this off and just give away like 2 to 3 of their shitty picks, plus trading off Karl-Anthony Towns, like I think they should pretty obviously do that, because I don't think they're going to win anything with Towns and Brunson as the mainstays of a playoff team. But I just also don't love this for Milwaukee at all. I don't really see why Milwaukee would do it. I don't think that just because Giannis wants to go here that they should accept an obviously bad package when teams, again, like the Hawks or some of the others we're going to talk about, I think have more appealing packages. So this is an interesting one to talk about. If you can find some 3-team constructions where some other team is taking back Karl-Anthony Towns, I saw one with New Orleans where, Milwaukee is getting Zion, taking the flyer on Zion. They get some assets from New Orleans, some assets from New York. Karl-Anthony Towns goes to New Orleans, but I don't know. If something like that materializes, I would be open to it, but again, as of now, I just don't love the package from New York. The third team that we have to mention, because they are always star hunting, are the Miami Heat. I actually really, really, really love this fit for Giannis in Miami. I think their current offensive style, which has been talked about at length by certain commentators in the NBA, which is just this pass heavy, ISO heavy kind of offense, I think would be really interesting to integrate Giannis into. He could really dominate with the amount of space that they generate on the court. And it's Heat culture. Maybe that's something that Giannis would be open to in Miami. That's a big market. It's a big city. So I think there's a lot of things that kind of add up here that would make Giannis a good pairing in Miami. And I don't think the Miami trade package is that bad, although it's not stellar. The Miami trade package would essentially center around Kel'el Ware and probably Jaime Jaquez as well. This would be a big deal where Miami is trading out like 4 contracts to make up the Giannis contract, and then they give away Kel'el Ware and Jaime Jaquez, 2 kind of younger-ish players, and then they have a bevy of picks that they could also include here. I think the value of this trade depends entirely on what you think of Kel'el Ware and Jaime Jaquez. After a really rough second season, Jaime has come along very well coming off the bench for this Miami Heat team. He's certainly a 6 Man of the Year candidate. His playstyle is really interesting. He's kind of a bulldog who just likes to get to the rim, put his head down. He's kind of fun, although he is a bit of an older young guy. I think he's around like 23 or 24 years old already. But Kel'el Ware is really interesting. And again, the value of this trade entirely depends on what you think of Kel'el Ware as a prospect. Second-year guy now. He's coming off the bench for the most part for the Heat because of Bam, obviously. But I think he's shown a lot of really interesting character traits. He's become a really good rebounder this season. He has great soft touch around the rim. He's shown some ability to shoot the ball beyond the perimeter. So he's very interesting. Maybe I'm not quite as high as some people probably are on him, but I think he's a very good, interesting young player. And then just how many picks do the Heat want to involve? If you're throwing in like 4 unprotected picks, I think we've got something to talk about. But like I said, I really like the idea of Giannis in Miami. I think they have all sorts of interesting young not young players, but role players that would be left. You'd still have Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo in the scenario that I kind of laid out above, and I think that definitely makes for a contending team in the Eastern Conference. So if I'm Miami, I'm giving this one a real hard look. Back before a couple years ago when they wouldn't trade Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez for Damian Lillard, I'd be interested to see what these conversations look like. They seem to really value their young guys. So maybe they wouldn't be willing to put both of those guys in a Giannis trade, but I think I would. And I think this trade package kind of satisfies all parties. So super interested to see if the Heat get involved here. Now, the second to last team that we have to talk about here is the San Antonio Spurs. I think this trade idea is just born of people's fantasies. They want to see Giannis and Wemby on the same court at the same time. And listen, how can you blame them? I, though, am not a fan of the Spurs going out and trading for Giannis in this moment. We're talking about a team that is still so young. They're still developing. They have so much talent there. So many guys that are still on rookie scale deals like Steph Castle and Dylan Harper. And they also haven't even been to the playoffs yet. I think, me personally, with my philosophy, I would rather just wait it out. You have a lot more team control over your young guys here moving forward. They're going to be a lot cheaper than Giannis is at 35% of the cap. And I would just rather, let's make the playoffs first. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we feel like we need if we lose. And then we'll go from there. Rather than going out and trading for Giannis today and not even potentially, but like accelerating your timeline very, very quick. I love Wemby as much as the next guy, and Wemby is obviously like a top 5 talent in the NBA right now, right today, but he's also been a little, I don't want to say injury prone, but he's hurt right now with the weird blood clot thing last season. I'd rather see this play out. They're young. I don't want to advance the timeline too much. I honestly don't think the Spurs will do this because the asking price is going to be really, really high. And I'd really also just like for Giannis to not be in the West. If we're going to talk about a Spurs package, it has to be centered around one of 2 guys, either Steph Castle or Dylan Harper. And personally, if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, I'd be asking for Dylan Harper in this scenario. I just like him more as a projectable lead guard in the NBA or elite ball handler at least. And he's a year younger than Steph Castle, or he's a rookie this season. Steph Castle's a second-year guy, so your timeline is stretched out a little bit before you have to pay him. And I really love what we've seen from him this season. But again, if I'm the Spurs, I'm not sure I really want to move off Dylan Harper yet. And it's not just because I think it's, I'm worried about Dylan Harper, becoming the next Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and this looking like the Paul George trade or something. But we have to think about team control. In the second apron era, teams are just going to value young guys that they can control for longer. And the reality is that Giannis costs 35% of your cap. He's only got 2 years left on his deal. So you're talking about needing to contend now. Whereas with Dylan Harper and Steph Castle, these are guys that are very, very cheap for at the bare minimum 3 more years. And then when you extend them, if you extend them at a max number, you're only paying them 30% of the cap. That's a 5% difference of the cap is $10 million or something probably. So you have so much more control with Dylan Harper. I don't want to expand the timeline this fast because I'm not sure that this Spurs team with Giannis is absolutely a contender. Again, I understand the impetus to want to see Giannis and Wemby together. It would be electric. It would be fun. It would be wild. It would be crazy. 2 of the most interesting physical specimens we've ever had in the NBA. But still, I'd just rather slow play this a little bit. You're young, be young, make it to the playoffs, feel out what you need, and then we'll move on from there. All right, we are on to our last team here, and the last team that I want to bring up today is the Cleveland Cavaliers. This isn't a team that's necessarily been mentioned by a whole lot of people, but amidst a very, very interesting start to their season in which everyone before the season was kind of like, hey, who cares about the regular season with the Cavs? We'll wait till the playoffs and then we'll talk about them. But I think we're at the point, man, where we got to talk about what they're doing in this regular season. They look very kind of just stale. Evan Mobley has not taken the leap that we had hoped. Darius Garland is in and out of the lineup. Jared Allen is in and out of the lineup, and he's not been very good when he plays. And basically, we're just going out there. We are hoping that Donovan Mitchell scores 35 points a game, and that's it. That's it right now. So this feels like a team that could possibly maybe get desperate closer to the trade deadline, although I don't really believe this in my heart of hearts, but it's something I want to talk about. There's a lot of other teams that we can mention here, but I want to talk about this one. Now, a Giannis trade to Cleveland is really difficult, mostly because Cleveland is over the second apron, so they can't aggregate players, and they don't have a singular contract that is big enough to trade for Giannis straight up. So we'd be talking about a scenario in which they are offloading someone like Jarrett Allen or Max Strus, one of their other kind of bigger contracts, and then also trading for Giannis. So they'd have to get under the second apron first and then trade for Giannis. So big moves, not just trading for Giannis straight up. This would probably be a package centered around Evan Mobley. The only reason I think the Cavs would consider this is because, again, Mobley really hasn't taken the leap that we were hoping to see from him, at least that I was hoping to see from him. He's still we're at the same level of offensive output that we were last season. I just don't think the aggressiveness is there yet, and the scoring, the offensive package is not there yet. So now we're at a point, I think people always kind of assumed like Donovan Mitchell was going. I think the ideal version of this Cavs team is where Donovan Mitchell is your second best player and Evan Mobley is your best player, but maybe we're in a reality now where that's just not going to happen. So do the Cavs want to be like, okay, Donovan Mitchell is our best player right now. We are on his timeline for contention, so we have to get good now and not wait a couple more years for Evan Mobley to finally figure things out. Now, like I said, this one's pretty difficult to get done. Again, it would have to be a string of trades where we're offloading a bigger contract and then trading for Giannis. Really hard to do. That's a lot to ask. You're talking about moving off of Mobley and Allen in order to get Giannis or something like that. So this would be a big change for the Cavs. But I think it's interesting. I don't know if I would do it, obviously, but teams get desperate sometimes, and we've seen crazier things happen. So it's kind of just something I wanted to bring up as a possibility. I don't like Donovan Mitchell and Giannis would be very good. That's a very interesting duo. Just from a pure talent standpoint, you're probably talking about what should be the 1 seed in the East, but I'm not picking that team to win the championship by any means. So I don't think this one gets done. Still, just kind of a fun scenario that I think is interesting to speculate about, but I don't have any belief that this one would actually get done. Again, it would have to be something that develops within the next 2 months, and it would include the Cavs tearing down everything they've built over the past 5 years. So very, very unlikely, but interesting to think about nonetheless. Well, that's just going to go ahead and about wrap us up for this video today. Go ahead and let me know of your favorite trade destinations in the comments, or any trade packages you've found, discovered yourself, heard somebody else talk about that you think are interesting. I'd be so interested to see what other people feel on this subject. I think it's pretty obvious that the Bucks are nowhere near contention. They're not going to get near contention. So the time to trade Giannis is probably now. As unfortunate as that is for Bucks fans, I feel very sorry for them to have to deal with all of this. But hey, at least you got one championship out of it. But yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and leave a like on it. Subscribe if you're new here. Share with your friends if you feel so inclined. And I'm going to hope to catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.